Thanks for joining us. I'm Andrea Thomas. I'm the Chief Experience Officer here at the University of Utah, and we're very, very excited to be coming up to a new academic year. We're about just under a month away from the start of classes, and we've had a very active summer with a lot of orientations, a lot of students and parents on campus. And in the process of meeting with a lot of students and their parents, some questions kept coming up that we thought it would be useful to bring together some of the experts across campus to help provide information for you and then answer the questions that you might have. We'll be doing these webinars every week starting this week for the next couple of weeks. So we have 3 webinars planned with different topics. This week's webinar is a financial wellness webinar, and we've got several people that can talk about various things in this area. Then next week, we're going to have a Getting Move-In Ready webinar. So a lot of you will have students coming up to campus, and so we're going to talk about the logistics and details of what that move-in week is going to look like. And then the final week on August 9th, we're going to talk about student safety, rights, and resources on campus. All of these are at noon on Wednesday. We are recording and we will post these to the Utah Fresh website so that if you're not able to attend, you will be able to have access to the webinar and to get the information. As Sean mentioned, if you have questions, please feel free to type those into the chat and we'll answer as many of those questions as we can during the webinar. I want to introduce our panelists today. We're very, very grateful to have them. We have Jordan Jameson, who's the Assistant Registrar, and he's going to be talking to you about FERPA, which is a federal law, which the details will be very helpful to you. And then we're going to have Kevin Howe from Financial Aid and Scholarships talk to you a little bit about how the awards will show up. We've got Henry Knudson and Brooke McDaniels from the Bursar's office. They help with all things of paying tuition and any charges that come, and they can help you understand how we do that. And then finally, Beth Hunsaker, who's the Associate Director of the Office of Student Financial Wellness, will talk about some resources that we have for you and your students in this area. And then I might be popping in at the end of each of the folks if there's any questions that come up in that area, and then we will also take questions at the end. So with that, I want to thank you all for being here, and I thank our panelists, and Jordan, we'll turn it over to you.
Hey there, everyone. My name is Jordan Jameson, and I am an Assistant Registrar for Academic Services with the Office of the Registrar here on campus. So the Registrar's Office serves our students in a variety of ways, but one of our areas that we oversee is the university's compliance with FERPA, which is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. FERPA is important for all students and parents to understand, especially as they begin their college careers. And so I'm just going to give you a very brief overview of what FERPA is, what it does to serve our students, and what you need to know moving forward. So as I mentioned before, FERPA is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. It's enforced by the U.S. Department of Education. All institutions are required to adhere to its policies when A, students of the institution receive federal tuition aid and or the tuition receives federal or state funding. So basically what that means is because of these criteria, all schools, colleges, and universities need to comply with the act. There's virtually no institutions that do not receive funding from the government. So we are, as the University of Utah, we are obligated to comply with the act and all of its requirements. And so as a brief overview, a few key points onto the next slide. A few key points of the act is first, all schools must allow its students to inspect their education records. So whether it be the Office of the Registrar, the Dean of Students Office, housing, any department needs to allow students to see what records they hold on behalf of a student. And the second part is students' education records with personally identifiable information cannot be disclosed to third parties without their knowledge and consent. There's a few caveats to those 2 points, but the biggest thing is if there is some type of data that's tied to a student's name, we have to gain their consent before we can inform other parties of that information. So I'm just going to explain a little bit of what an education record is and how the personal identifiable information can really be tied to that student and what a record is. So one thing that's important for all parents to know is that FERPA rights transfer to the student once they reach the age of 18 or when they attend their first college course, regardless of their age. So for example, let's say we have a student who is a high school student who is taking college courses at the University of Utah. They could be 16, 17. The first time they attend that course, all FERPA rights and all data regarding their student status at the University of Utah transfers to them. So that means they have power over who can access their student records, even if they're underage, or if a parent were to be paying a minor's tuition, that means that all FERPA rights do transfer to the student. On to the next point, education records mostly include students' grades or their grade point average, their class schedule, financial aid information, advising notes, basically anything that has to do with their student information and their name tied to it. That would be an education record of that particular student. One brief thing to mention is directory information. And directory information essentially is what the university deems as non-invasive information that can be released publicly without the student's consent. So that can include name, their university email, that type of basic student information, which can be accessible to third parties without students' consent. Students do have the option to restrict directory information from third parties. And basically what they would do is jump onto Campus Information Services, which is the student portal, and they can restrict directory information so the university does not have the autonomy to release that non-invasive information to third parties without their consent. All this information is on the Office of the Registrar website, but it is important for students and parents to understand that restricting this non-invasive directory information is an option. Last, there is what we call a legitimate educational interest. So there's staff across campus, advisors. We all have jobs that are required for us to access student information in order to complete those obligations or duties of our positions. So if there's a, quote, legitimate educational interest when we are doing our jobs, we do have to access student data and use that data. And if there is a legitimate educational interest where we are doing university business, that is a situation where we would not need to gain student consent for that legitimate interest. So those are a few pieces of information around education records, what they are and how we use it. But for parents, there's a few important things that you need to know moving forward. So for the University of Utah to comply with this act, though they are either the age of 18 or when they attend their first class at the University of Utah, as we mentioned before, all FERPA rights transfer to the students. So this means that parents do not have automatic access to their students' education record. That means that students would need to give consent for parents or families to access their education records, or for the university to release any education record or information to parents. So for us to comply with this act, we do give students the option to go into Campus Information Services, and they can designate certain individuals who can access their education records. So as you move forward with your student beginning classes here at the U, just make sure you have a conversation with them, and they would have to independently choose to give that consent to parents before the university can give out any information. There are a few limitations that do apply with FERPA. So As I mentioned before, there is the legitimate educational interest that the university has. There is the occasional health or safety emergency, which is a rare circumstance, but we are able to release student record information in those types of situations. We went over what directory information is. Unless a student has restricted that directory information, we can release it to third parties. And there is the occasional subpoena or court order where parents can have access to student data. But for the vast majority of students at this university, they will need to go into campus information services and grant consent to those who they select for the release of their education records. So if you go to registrar.utah.edu, there's more information about what FERPA is, how to log on to CIS, Campus Information Services, and grant consent to individuals to access student records or restrict directory information. All of those steps and instructions are on our website. So I encourage you to review that information, have a conversation with your students. Students can learn more about FERPA there. My contact information is also on those FERPA web pages on the registrar website. So I encourage you to shoot me over an email and we can answer more in-depth questions for you. But it's important for all parents and students to know what their rights are and how we protect students' data. So that is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. And like I said, feel free to reach out and we can help out in any way possible.
Thanks so much, Jordan. There's no questions right now. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we can answer those also at the end of the webinar. One thing just to note, it can be frustrating as a parent moving from high school to college, where in high school you're used to being able to call the guidance counselor, call the office and get information. And so you might want to reach out to people at the University of Utah and you might feel like, wow, they're really unfriendly because they won't help me. Well, the reason for that is because we actually have very friendly people here, but there is a law that precludes us from doing that. And so either releasing you through what Jordan talked through is a way that you can get that information, or if you want to just be on a phone call with your child, so your child's reaching out and interacting and you're there for support, then your child's right there, they get that access. And so that can often be a way that you can help your child figure things out. So Robin's asking a question, and this might come up when Henry and Brooke talk. She's asking if FERPA was enabled for the Office of Finance, is that approval the same for educational records? So do you just need one FERPA approval, or does it have to be approved through various departments?
So when students log on to CIS to grant consent to certain individuals, it would just be that one place where they can grant consent for that individual. And they would not need to have consent from certain offices across campus. It's just that one place on Campus Information Services. So that's all they would need to go to.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jordan. There was another question, but I think that one's going to be answered through the rest of the webinar. If not, I'll come back to it. So now we've got Kevin Howe, who works in financial aid and scholarships. And between Kevin's discussion and then Henry and Brooke talking about how to pay your tuition bill, I think that that will provide a lot of important information, but they kind of go together a little bit. So Kevin, we'll start with you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. So like Andrea said, my name is Kevin Howe. I am the Senior Assistant Director for Outreach, Training, and Communications with the Office of Scholarship and Financial Aid. So this webinar, so I'm going to try my best to make this as quick and efficient as possible, but this information is pretty general. And I have placed throughout the presentation QR codes for you to scan if you would like to find out more information about that particular topic. And the very last slide of this presentation is all the different ways you can contact us. So just a heads up as we're going through that, that's what those are. So the first thing I want to talk about that I think is probably an important part of financial aid is understanding what cost of attendance is. So cost of attendance is an estimate. It is a guess of school-related expenses for the academic year. Now, I will share with you, we use data to create these dollar amounts for each of these 5 categories. We are not just throwing darts at the wall. This is an actual, we are creating a budget for the student. That's what we call it, that our cost of attendance is a budget. These 5 topics that you see listed on the screen are the 5 areas that are legislated. So cost of attendance is a legislative act that all universities who receive federal funding must publish on their website. So if you're looking at other universities, the phrase that you want to look at is cost of attendance, and you can compare ours to other universities, but our office is the office that creates these numbers and publishes them. And these are the 5 categories. We're going to talk about types of financial aid. And so I'm going to quickly go through the different types that are available to students and parents as well. So when we talk about different categories of financial aid, there are 2 main categories. In financial aid, they are either need-based or merit-based. And when we think of merit-based aid, it is aid that is based on achievements. And I like to use the 3 A's. It's either academic, artistic, or athletic. Those are merit-based aid. The other type is need-based. So need-based is aid that is based on a student or family's need, and it requires FAFSA data. So if you do not complete a FAFSA, you are not eligible for need-based aid. And I think it's important just to reiterate, even though you think you might not be eligible for need-based aid, complete the FAFSA, because we see a lot of instances where a student's or family's income changes significantly, either it's due to COVID or something else in the family. And having this data available and already completed allows the student to receive aid that maybe they weren't eligible for several months ago. So this is an important thing to do. So on the next slide, we're going to talk about grants. So grants are money that is not required to be paid back. These are the Pell Grant and the FSEOG grant. These are the 2 common ones that you're going to see for students. For the 23-24 year, the maximum amount of Pell is $73.95. And for the FSEOG, it's $1,000. So by completing a FAFSA, you make yourself eligible to be reviewed for $8,395. And so I think it's important just to reiterate, even if you think you're not eligible, you might be throwing away some money that maybe you aren't quite sure of. So these are the federal grants that are available to students. Another type of financial aid that's available is federal work study. And work study provides students with the opportunity for employment either on or off campus. The maximum offer that we give students is $5,000. And this is not sent to income accounting, which they're going to talk about here in a little bit, but it is not part of their aid package that we send over to them. Students receive this $5,000 as a paycheck. They do it bi-weekly, and you can find all the federal work study positions that are available on the university's website. They have a filter where you can look at employment opportunities, federal work study, yes or no. If you click yes, this morning when I looked, there were 83 jobs that were open. So this is one type of financial aid that is available to students. The $5,000 maximum amount is what they can earn for the academic year. So they can't earn more than $5,000. So another type of financial aid that we go to, and I've listed this one towards the end because this is our last resort when it comes to financial aid, are federal student loans. So federal student loans, there are 2 types. And I want to spend a little bit of time real quickly talking about the different types. These loans are very similar, which is why I've included them on the same slide. They have the same interest rate. If you notice, they're both 5.5%. They both have the same disbursement rules. So what that means is when they are dispersed, they begin accruing interest on day one of their disbursement. They also have the same repayment guidelines. And what that means is once a student graduates or steps out of not being enrolled for more than 6 months, they are required to begin repayment. The difference between the two, notice the un in unsub. So subsidized, a subsidized loan means that when the interest begins accruing on day one, the federal government will subsidize that for the student or pay it. On an unsubsidized loan, un meaning not, the federal government will not subsidize the interest on those loans. So notice that we want students to have more in subsidized loans than unsubsidized loans. And so typically the most a first-year student can get is $5,500. We want subsidized to be the maximum amount that they can receive. So each of these three that you see without the big cross through is a typical scenario. And that's what I mean by the amount varies, but the maximum amount for a first-year student is $5,500. So if you go to the next slide, it's the same information, but with a transfer student. So I wasn't sure if transfer students would be on this or parents would be here, but the only real difference between this slide and the previous one is the amount. So if you notice that a third-year student receives $7,500 rather than $5,500 for their maximum amounts. So as students progress through college, they're eligible to receive more in loans. So on the next slide, this is where parents come in. So we talked about cost of attendance earlier, and parents are also able to take out a loan. It's called a Parent Plus loan. The Department of Education is the lender. So you fill out the application through the Department of Ed. This current aid year, the interest rate is 8.05%. It is credit-based, but when we talked about earlier where the loans had a maximum amount of $5,500, these Parent Plus loans do not, as long as they don't exceed the unmet cost of attendance. So if the cost of attendance is 30 grand, the student has an unmet cost of attendance of 25,000. You as the parent could take out a loan for the difference, which would be a $25,000 loan. That's a lot of money. And so we use this as a very last resort. But this is something that is an option. It's an unsubsidized loan. So that means the government will not subsidize the interest while this is in payment. So the next couple slides, I want to talk about how do you get this aid, right? So how do you apply for federal aid and how do you receive it? So this slide is an and, not an or. So they have to meet all three of these requirements. They have to have earned a high school degree or an equivalent, be admitted as a matriculated student. So they're not here for fun. They're here to seek a degree. And they have to be a US citizen or eligible non-citizen. So if they meet all three of these requirements, they are able to receive federal aid. So what is a FAFSA? FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. This must be done annually. So just because you complete it for their first year does not mean you don't have to do it the next year. It has to be done every year. And we use the prior tax information for this, both the student and the parent. And what that means is for fall of 23, so prior, so 2023 minus 2 is 2021. So we use 2021's tax data. And the reason for the Department of Ed really wants to use accurate data. And if we use the prior year, one of the challenges we have is that parents have completed or requested an extension to their tax return. And so we're not able to use accurate data. We're using estimates. And so that's why prior is used. So once the student completes the FAFSA, the Department of Ed reviews it, and that's what DOE is. So you submit these to the Department of Education, not the university. This goes to the Department of Education. The Department of Education reviews the data that you put on there. After they review it, they send it to the University of Utah. So we receive your FAFSA from the Department of Education. We look at the information that we receive, and based on that information, we send a letter to the student through their U-mail. So this is kind of a step-by-step process. And really my intent on this slide is to share with you that receiving financial aid does not happen in one day. This is a multi-step, multi-day process. And hopefully most of you have already started this process. If not, I would recommend you doing that as soon as possible. But this is not something, I use the analogy, this is not the lottery. You do not go buy a ticket and get a winning from it. It's a process, and it can take up to about 2 weeks for the entire process without any hiccups. So when you're looking at the University of Utah, if you go to I want to talk a little bit about scholarships. So our office controls first year and transfer merit scholarships. Those offers were already sent to students, and we sent them on March 1st. With any type of scholarship, and you'll see this on a couple slides, what's really important is to review the terms and conditions, and with specific attention to what are the requirements to renew it and what are the requirements to defer the scholarship. Some scholarships are not able to be deferred and some are. When we look at departmental scholarships, so these are from the different departments across campus, College of Engineering, College of Business. Their due dates vary by the type of scholarship that they offer. And here's the website to apply for those. And again, pay very close attention to what their terms and conditions are. But this is another resource for types of scholarships at the University of Utah. And then the last slide is all the different ways you can contact us. Students can come in person. That's our location, our phone number, email, and website. A lot of the information that you're going to have questions about can be answered on our website. So it's pretty robust and useful. And that's our office hours as well. So, I'm done.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah.
We do have a question. How do I make payments to my subsidized and unsubsidized loans while in college?
Yeah, good question. So the federal government, these are federal government loans. The Department of Education is your lender. The Department of Education will assign every student who takes out a loan a lender, and there are 5 options for that. So when you go to studentaid.gov, and one of the links on their website is to find your lender. Who is my lender? I believe is the right link that they have. Who is my lender? You would click on that and enter your FAFSA information, and they will tell you who your lender is and how to contact them. You would then contact the lender to see how you begin making payments to them while you're in school. Yes, that's how you do it.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. And
you're welcome.
Another question, what if you didn't receive enough financial aid or scholarships? Are there other options for assistance?
So I'm assuming what that means is that they know they're going to pay $30,000, but they only got $20,000 in aid. How do I make up that gap? And so there are a couple ways things we can do. Parent Plus loan is one option that we often is a common option for students. If there has been a significant change in income, we can review from 2021 to now is what I mean. So when you enter your original tax data, you were making $100,000 in 2021, and now you're only making $30,000. We can review that difference and possibly see if you're eligible for a different amount of federal aid. But those are usually the 2 routes that we go when we're talking about trying to cover that gap.
Thanks, Kevin. Are all students eligible for federal work study?
No. So in order to be eligible for federal work study, you have to have completed a FAFSA. So if you do not complete a FAFSA, you are not eligible for work study. And so if you are interested in work study, you complete a FAFSA. And one of the questions, it's very direct. Are you interested in work study? And so you would say yes. And that is how you become eligible for work study.
Okay, great. When they get a scholarship, for example, like a WUI scholarship or another kind of scholarship, do students have to do anything after it's awarded their first year? I know it depends on the scholarship, but if it's a 4-year scholarship, like a WUI scholarship, is there anything they have to do other than remain eligible?
So once you're awarded the WUI, there is not a separate step for you to accept it. So the way you accept the WUI, if you want to think of it that way, is you confirm your intent to enroll. So by paying your $300 to admissions to say, yes, I am coming to the University of Utah, the only thing you have to do after that to renew it is maintain the terms and conditions for renewal.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to Henry and Brooke. I know there's still another question in the Q&A, but I'm going to take that one at the very end because I think there's some answers that will come through the rest of the presentations. And so Henry and Brooke, they work in the Bursar's office, income accounting. And so we'll let you provide some information.
Perfect. What me and Brooke are here to do is try to make it feel like you guys know exactly where you need to go to pay your tuition. So if you want to move to the next slide for me, I want to first take you through your student's CIS page. So you'll log on with them, and where you go to actually pay the bill online is going to be this tuition and loans tile. Next slide. When tuition posts on August 1st, you'll be able to see the full bill available to you. If you want today to have a rough estimate, I'm going to be posting a resource in the chat where you can go and you can look at the estimator that's going to be built around how many credit hours your student is signed up for. But on August 1st, your tuition will post. You'll be able to see it in your tuition history. And that is where you'll be able to get an accurate number for what your tuition costs for the semester are going to be. Next slide for me, thank you. The date we're all going to be focused on in the next month here is September 1st. If you haven't seen the ground floor of the Student Services building on September 1st, I hope you never see it because it's not good. It's very, very packed because we are congested at that point with people who don't know the other options available to them. So September 1st is the day that tuition is due. By then, you will either need to pay the tuition in full or set up a payment plan for your tuition or have accepted federal financial aid. What we're trying to do is make sure by September 1st that our students all have a plan for their tuition, whether it's being paid in full, an actual payment plan, or aid to help them out. After September 1st, if no plan is in place, you will be charged a $75 late fee. Financial aid, payment plan, or payment can all exempt you from this. In terms of withdrawing classes, you want to have that done before September 1st. That is the add drop deadline. For first half classes, which are slightly different, there is a separate deadline that's a little bit sooner. It is August 25th is when you will want to have add or dropped your first half classes. So make sure when you're communicating with your student that you know whether they have them at all. Most students don't, but it's not a fun surprise to find out that you do have a first half class and that you're behind on the draw. Next slide for me, please. So you can come and see my lovely face at room 165 in the Student Services building, or if you prefer not to wait 2 hours in a line as we get closer and closer to September 1st, you can pay online. I always recommend paying online simply because some universities may charge a percentage on a credit card transaction, but for the University of Utah, the only fee we charge for a credit card transaction online is a flat $3 convenience fee. Other than that, your tuition is the exact same, and it is a fantastic option where you don't even have to come show up. As much as I would love to meet you, I have a feeling you would like to meet me less. And so next slide for me. for your 529 payments, you do want to get these sent in as soon as possible, because 529 companies send us a check in the mail. That's what's actually happening, and we have to wait for that check to arrive. We will post them as soon as we get them. I'll be the one posting them, but they are by the whims of the post office the majority of the time. I recommend on August 1st, when you get your bill, to send in a 529 check. If you make payments from there, or not if you make payments, if you make adjustments to your schedule in the meantime, and by the time your 529 check arrives, you find out you've under or overpaid, we can work with you from there. But as long as you've sent in the 529 check, we can help. And we can work with you because we have something to work with. If you are trying to send in a 529 check a week before tuition is due, it's going to be a lot harder for us because, like I said, they're sending us the check in the mail, and we just won't have it by the deadline. In terms of payment online, when you go into your tuition and loans tile in your student CIS, you can access QuickPay. And you can do one of two things. You can either have your student just with you and you can give them your card number and you can make a payment manually, or you can have them set you up as an authorized payer so that when you want, you can go into the account and on their behalf, either make payments or set up payment plans. Both, from what I've heard from parents, are about as convenient as the other. It really is a boon later in the semesters and later as your kid goes on in their college career to be an authorized payer, because you only need to set it up once. But also it is not terribly inconvenient to be on the phone with your student and just walk them through their own portal. So I recommend setting up as an authorized payer if your student is new, and it is optional. Next slide. Now, the payment plan options at this point, we are looking at just the 4-month payment plan is available for fall. Yes, I appreciate that. So for this fall semester, September 1st, up until September 1st, we will have the 4-month payment plan option available to you. The 4 payments will be divided into a quarter of your tuition on each. And the only difference in price between enrolling in a payment plan and paying your tuition up front is a one-time $35. So there is no interest on your tuition. There are no fees besides that $35. What you will want to do is, it does not show 4 months, only 3 months online. I will explain that. So the 4-month payment plan is called that because you make a payment when you sign up. So online, it'll show up as 3 payments because you're only scheduling 3 for the future because you're handling the first one when you sign up. So we call it the 4-month because from today until September 1st, when you sign up, you will make that first payment anytime between now and then. The second payment will be on September 22nd, October 22nd, November 22nd. So the 22nd of each month after this sign-on date. And for spring, we will have a 5-month payment plan option available to you until I believe December. Until December 22nd or 21st.
Should be the 22nd.
The 22nd. So the 5-month payment plan is available for those people who want to start the payment plan earlier and spread it out over more individual payments. Housing and meal plans are also due on September 1st. At least our office collects on them September 1st. And as far as more info on the payment plan, then what you want to be sure of is if you know that there is going to be an issue with your payment coming out on for example, September 22nd, come talk to me at the window. Come talk to me and my supervisor. We can help you adjust your payment plan if we need to, because if we try to draft your account for, say, $4,000 and it fails, you'll end up with an unnecessary $30 fee that we could have helped you avoid. We are here the entire semester. We are here to help you adjust your payment plans, to make sure you're all set up for the next semester. Our job in those months is to be at your call and be ready to help you. So please come see me once the crowds are gone.
Or call.
Or call.
I'm always on the phones. So if we need to transfer you to, we have a coworker who works directly with payment plans. And so she's always available. Her name's Sherry. We also can connect you with our supervisors if needed. So we're here to help.
If there's a question, talk to us because we're here to talk to you. And that $30 fee for a failed payment is not something that we need to either of us to deal with, because we can be flexible and we can work with you. All we're trying to do is make sure that by the end of the semester, we have you taken care of so you can sign on to the next semester. Next slide. The short-term loan is an option that is available, but we do emphasize always that short-term aspect of it. You can apply for a loan with our office to temporarily pay for your tuition, but if you can plan on most other options, they tend to be more advantageous for the student and for the parent, because with a short-term loan, if you have it pay your tuition, you're looking at needing to pay that back within a month or two. The interest begins to accrue on October 1st for this loan with our office. This is not a long-term option. If you need financial aid, this is not what we classify as financial aid. This is to get your tuition paid on time if an emergency came up. This is an option to take if you have the money coming in already and you need the month. That's what this option is for. If you need more than a month, you'll want to look at a payment plan, or you'll want to look deeper into financial aid options. But this is a resource available to you, and you would fill out a form for it at our office. As far as after September 1st, after the payment plan deadline and the tuition deadline, if you are unable to pay, then first we have a $75 late fee. And then 2 weeks after September 1st is when we drop classes. So if by September 15th, the tuition is not paid and there is no plan in place, then we drop the students' classes and all fees associated with them. As far as tuition goes, we clear out the students' slate because there's been no payment, there's been no activity, and we do not want to continue charging the student if it looks like they're not going to be able to pay for it, because we don't want them to be sitting with that charge. So if by September 15th, you've made no payments on the classes, you have not set up a payment plan, we drop and remove all tuition charges. So that September 15th deadline is one that sometimes students even rely on as a help. And next slide. Financial aid will automatically apply to your tuition. For example, the Pell Grant will hold a student's classes, like we mentioned. It'll prevent a late fee, and federal financial aid are going to help a lot with automatically paying into the student's account and also holding classes. Good to go. We've talked a lot about FERPA, but if you come to the window as a parent trying to pay on behalf of the student, I will be asking you for the FERPA PIN and your ID, so that I can actually tell you the balance of the student's account. Okay. In terms of refunds, we wait to give out a refund until after the tuition due deadline so that we don't refund a parent or a student money that then was actually a tuition charge that they needed to pay. That will automatically go to a credit card first if you paid by card, a direct deposit second if direct deposit is set up on the account, which can be done in tuition and loans, and third, a paper check mailed to the student's mailing address. Good to go. And yeah, the things that you will want to remember are to have your student keep an eye on their email, because I contact students, Brooke contacts students, we all do by the email first, and to set up a direct deposit for your refunds early and often. Get your FERPA set up so that you as the parent can talk to me about your student if necessary.
Henry, there was a couple of questions that came through. So you say any questions, sorry, I jumped the last slide a little bit, but can you explain a little bit more what a 529 is, and if there's any reason that the 529 wouldn't go to the parent instead of the university, like if they paid with a credit card or something like that?
So 529s, some of them, the 529s are housed by a separate organization than us. They're college savings accounts that parents will likely have been putting into for years coming up to this. If you as a parent don't know what a 529 is when I'm discussing it, then you probably haven't set one up. Like, this probably isn't useful information for you. But for those who have set up a 529 account and have been putting away into it, then you tell the 529 company where your student is registered. You give them your student's UID to include in a memo, and the 529 will draw from the savings account you've set up with them and send it to the University of Utah as a payment to your student's tuition. Individual 529 companies will sometimes dish it out to the parent specifically, but that's a company by company basis. That's like, there's no general rule. The general rule, I should say, is that usually they'd send it to us. If you pay by credit card and then your 529 comes in and pays your student's tuition, we will refund you, the parent, by the credit card. So if you paid it in the meantime and then the 529 arrives, you get refunded what you spent, and we prioritize spending from the 529 account.
Great, thanks, Henry. Also, meal plans, are they included in the housing charge, or do they show up separate from the housing charge?
Meal plans, housing, tuition, all of it is paid through our office. All of it shows up on your tuition history, and we like all of it to be included in a payment plan, for example, and we take it all.
Okay, and then can you, if you have a payment plan already, can you view tuition payment history?
Yes. In tuition history, you can look and see what your payment plan, like each individual transaction, how much it was paying, all that. You will always have access to, did I answer the question or did I misunderstand it?
No, I think you answered the question. So it's available for you to look at. The history goes back further than one semester.
Exactly.
If you're signed up for the 5 payment plan, are payments automatically deducted each month from the credit card, or do they need to authorize payment each month?
Automatically deducted. That's why we always ask that if you feel like there's going to be a problem, talk to us, because we don't know there's a problem until it's failed, like AutoDebit.
Yeah, because we've had times where some students or parents will think that they have to make a personal payment on the scheduled times and don't realize it's an auto pay. And so sometimes there's like double payments there. So if you ever have a question, call us, come drop by in person. But it is on an automated schedule based on the card information you put in there or e-check.
Okay, and you don't have to have a payment plan. That was a question. It's just an option. Are the housing and meal plan payments also due September 1st?
Yeah, it's one bill. So tuition / housing billing is all due September 1st, or if you're signed up for a payment plan or have aid coming in.
Okay, excellent. And then if I want to mail a cashier's check to the tuition office, who do they write the check to?
Address all checks to the University of Utah.
Okay, excellent.
Make sure your student's UID is in the memo line.
UID in the memo line. Okay, good. I'm going to answer a couple or ask a couple more questions, and we want to make sure we leave time for Beth. If I have a quick pay set up, do I still need to set up FERPA?
If you want to ask.
Yeah, FERPA is more so informationally. So even if you're an authorized payer and you have access to the quick pay side of things, sometimes you have questions you want to ask that are details on a student account. we're still going to need that FERPA. And all it is the student just adds your name on there as the parent. And you still need to know what the FERPA PIN is, because sometimes the parent's on there, but they don't know what the PIN is, and we're still kind of stuck.
Okay, so you have to have a FERPA PIN. And then do you have any resources in your office to help with finding and securing private loans for unmet tuition, like a Sallie Mae loan?
We don't have any like that. It's actually, as far as I'm aware, it's part of the policy. We do not track individual loans, like individual loan companies. It's not a resource that our office has.
So Andrea, I can answer that question.
Thanks, Kevin.
We do not do that because we receive Title IV funding, so we do not seek private lenders. However, we do business with most of them. And so if you are interested in a Sallie Mae loan, you as the parent, reach out to Sallie Mae, and then Sallie Mae sends us the approval of the loan. But it's up to the parent or the student to do that work with the third-party lender.
Okay, great. I will take the rest of the questions at the end. Beth Hunsaker is here, and she's from the Office of Student Financial Wellness. It's a little overwhelming to come to college for a student and have to deal with all of this. So we have resources that Beth will tell you about.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, parents, for joining us for this information. We do want you to know that University of Utah knows that this is a stressful time, and the University of Utah really cares about our incoming students. And that's part of why our office was created. We've been here for over a decade in helping our students with financial stress. We just know that at that time in their lives, this is where we're here. So I'm in the student affairs department, where everybody else that you listened to today was more focused on getting students inside the classroom. We're the outside of classroom support to make sure that they can be successful within the classrooms. So University of Utah is very aware, and that's why we're here. We are here to support students by providing evidence-based tools, the support that they need. And we want students to understand that personal finance is a big part of their overall well-being, not just while they're here in school, but their entire lives. We are all covered, our fees are all covered in the student fees, so there's no charge for our services. But we do know that this is a stressful time. So what we focus on and what we look at is helping students understand the total cost of college. Kevin from Financial Aid talked about that cost of attendance, and we break that down for students and help it become personalized, help them understand the importance of budgeting. We also spend a lot of time talking with our students about credit. College years are actually a great time to start building a good, solid credit history. And we help them understand exactly how to do that. We all know how long it can take to build a good credit history, and also how easy it is to mess that up. So we want to provide that for our students. One of the best ways of doing that is understanding credit cards. So we really spend a lot of time educating students on how to use credit cards, and also how not to use credit cards. And if a student finds themselves in credit card troubles, we are there to support them and help them come up with a plan to get out of that. And finally, one of the last things that we do every spring is we do provide tax support for students. It's wonderful if you help your students get their taxes done, but if you also want them to start taking on some more responsibility, we have free tax filing services that we can help students with. So if you'll go to the next slide, we do really start with the basics of budgeting. Even if you, the parent, are giving them money to be in school, they need to learn how to manage that. And so we really focus on how to create a budget. We run budget challenges every semester that if they go through and create a budget, we'll give them a prize. We really want them to see that that's something they can work on in school. And if you'll go to the next slide, one of our plans that we do is one of our goals is we want students to get the return on the investment. I'm sure you all know how expensive college is. And we want them to get that return in getting their degree and completing it as quickly as possible, so they can get that return. And so we really try to focus on planning ahead. We might have fall and spring figured out, but what about next year? Are things going to change? Are they going to have the same scholarship, or do they need to find more money? So we really focus on creating a semester by semester plan. So if you'll go to the next slide. Again, understanding credit and building credit. The two things I would recommend to you as parents is to maybe look at putting them as an authorized user on one of your cards. You can do this before they're 18. I put my 15-year-old son on as an authorized user on my account. So when he turns 18 and goes to apply for his own credit, that will show up on his credit history and it will boost his credit score. He doesn't even know that he has a card. I'm not going to let him use it because he'd buy sneakers. So you can do that. You could also look at student credit cards. University of Utah has a partnership with You First, and they have a really good student card. Always look for low fees and always look at guardrails or safeguards. The first credit card should maybe have a $500 limit. So if they do run into some trouble, the damage isn't as much as if they had a $3,000 limit. So we do recommend that. We will help students. What we do is we educate them and then they make their own choice. But the great thing about our office is we don't make any money off of students. We don't have affiliate and all of that. So the information they get is unbiased, and we just help them make those decisions. So if you'll go to the next slide. Taxes, something we do. We have free tax filing services through our website that students could do on their own, but we do tax clinics every year, every spring, starting in February. A lot of times students don't know if they should file. We recommend looking into it, even if they don't make very much money. There might be options for them. If you earn over $12,950, you should file because that's the standard deduction. If students worked fewer or earned fewer amounts than that, then they want to file if they had withholdings, because then they can get that money back. Another thing to think about is if you have an out-of-state student, and if you're not on WUI and you're hoping to get residency, a student filing on their own will help that process along. So that's also a good time for students to start doing their own taxes. Parents, you can still claim your child on your taxes because they're in school. So if this is your first child, just make sure you know that, because we want to make sure you're getting those tax credits for educational. And the two that you will look at, the main one is the American Opportunity Tax Credit. That's for undergraduates. It can be a really good credit to have because it is refundable. So even if it takes your tax down to zero, you can get some money back. To know if you can qualify for this, next year in January, you'll go to the students CIS student page that we've been talking about and look for their 1098T. That's going to show how much you paid towards their tuition minus any scholarships or federal grants that was given. So even if you took out a loan, that doesn't count as like you paid for it because you're going to have to pay back that loan. That will show you how much that you can have. Any questions that you have on that, our office can help. We do it every spring, help parents and students figure out how to get those taxes filed. So if you'll go to that next slide. Your students are in this really cool stage of life where right now they're completely dependent on you financially. And eventually they're going to become financially independent. So they're on this road. And some students think, oh, I'm so young, I don't need to think about this stuff, I'm in college. But actually, there are some really essential financial skills that they can work on. And the 6 that we recommend that they work on are building an emergency fund, even if it's $500, having something just in case, learning about investing, understanding how to use credit cards wisely, building their credit, creating budgets, and working on their financial goals. And that's what we're here to help with. So if you'll go to the next slide. We do offer informational workshops every year. That's that QR code on our cute little piggy is our website. The biggest thing we do is we actually do free financial counseling for our students, one-on-one, confidential, as many as they want. This morning, I got to help somebody open her Roth IRA, and that was just an amazing moment. Every time parents learn about us, they get really excited and wish they would have had this opportunity at their university. So I'm really grateful that the U cares enough about our students that they're able to do this. So if you could encourage your students to come and use us, but maybe not like too hard, because you know parents aren't cool and they don't know anything, right? Just like maybe a little nudge, like, hey, get your taxes done. We'd appreciate that plug with your students. And we're here for you and your students. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Beth. I have a couple of last questions, kind of general. So for everyone, one question is, how can you get the best estimate of your full year charges? You know, I know it kind of depends on what people sign up for and register for, so it's not going to be exact coming into the year, but a couple of you talked about the estimated cost of school. So any suggestions on getting the best estimate for tuition, fees, housing, meal plans, all the total cost?
I'll go with this. So I will put in the chat a link. So on our website, we have a tuition estimator that you can use to input how many credits they're taking. So this is the challenge to determine budgets, is the university charges on a credit by credit basis. So if you take 12 credits in the spring and then 16 in the fall, or 12 in the fall, 16 in the spring, your charge will be different because you have an increase in credit. So this is a good tuition estimator to use. And so that is what we use when students call us and say, hey, how do I figure out what my estimate will be? This is where we direct students to go.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kevin. Is there an advantage of paying full price out-of-state tuition in full? They missed the WUI scholarship deadline, or would the total price be the same as the price installments? So Henry, this is probably for you.
So when you are trying to decide between taking the WUI or paying the out-of-state tuition for a year while you get in-state residency, then the math ends up, I did this math at the window with someone the other day, the math ends up getting very, very close to the same price. But if, for example, you in your first year took advantage of the fact that the summer semester is in-state tuition, like that's the cost of the summer semester will be in-state tuition regardless of your residency status, you can make it cheaper for yourself. But if you are looking at a standard 4-year schedule, then paying for the WUI is, like going in with the WUI program is usually better.
But if you missed the WUI, so if you missed the WUI and don't have that, then paying out-of-state tuition the first year and becoming a resident, Utah has some of the easiest residency laws in the country. So a student can become a resident after living in the state of Utah for 12 months and then also not being claimed on their parents' taxes. And so if you go to the the admissions office, they have a residency section, so you can look at the residency guidelines. Also, just in general, you offer a payment plan, but if somebody just pays in full by September 1st, the advantage they have over the payment plan is they don't pay the fee for the payment plan, the $35 fee, correct? But everything else is the same.
Everything else is the exact same, but you have $35 that you can buy a nice meal with.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And then this question, I think, Jordan, is probably for you. And the question is just in general, there's other things that students need to do, like vaccines and those types of things that could cause a financial hold later on. Where do they go to find that all out? How do they know which vaccines they need, where to upload them? That's a registrar question, correct, Jordan?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the best place to look at what students need to do or possible holds that may be on their account is to go onto Campus Information Services, so CIS, and there's a little to-do list icon they can click on, and it lists everything from vaccines to other financial holds or residency holds. Those types of things would all be on CIS on their student account.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jordan. And then Kevin, last question goes to you because we have to wrap this up. It will drop us automatically at 1:15. So you answered in the chat a question that I think somebody else had. So if you could just talk through, if you didn't choose work study on your FAFSA, but you still want to do a work study, how do you make that change?
Yeah, sure. So the option on the FAFSA is yes, I want it. No, I don't. Maybe I'm not quite sure. If you select the no option or you leave it blank, and then you decide, you know what, I do think I want federal work study after you've submitted your FAFSA, you just send our office an email at financialaid.utah.edu requesting that we review your file for federal work study eligibility. So just simply because you forgot to mark it or chose not to, or maybe didn't want it at the time that you submitted your FAFSA, and now you've changed your mind, does not mean you're not eligible. So there is a way to get it afterwards. And it's just by sending us a memo. And we have 2 people in our office that's all they do is federal work study review and eligibility. And they would reach out to the student if they were eligible.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Kevin. Well, I want to thank all the parents for joining us. I want to thank Jordan, Henry, Beth, Kevin, and Brooke for providing this great information. We do have a place on our website. So utah.edu has a ton of information. So you can go, if you have a question, you can go to the department you think it's in. If it's a question for a new student, you can go to Utah Fresh, which kind of aggregates some checklists and kind of prioritizes with some links, some information for you. We will be doing this webinar Wednesday at noon to 1:15. Next week's webinar is the Getting Move-In Ready with our housing and residential education folks. And then the week after that, on August 9th, we're going to talk about student safety, rights, and resources. And then we will be posting the video of this webinar on the Utah Fresh website. So if you want to go back and review things, that will be available for you there. So thanks everyone for coming, and we're very, very excited to have you and your students as part of the University of Utah community. And have a great rest of your day.